Let's jump right in. SaaSCan project. We undertook an initiative to look at SaaS churn and retention post-COVID. And want to just tell you, I was looking back at the dates, Allan and Brad and others when we started working on this. It hasn't even been 2 weeks since we hatched the initial idea for this. And we ran the survey, 10 questions from April 8th to 15th, so for about a week. And we distributed it through 7 different channels. And you can see what they are here. We were really trying to reach out to a much broader community beyond just Ottawa. And we got some support through Toronto, through Communitech Waterloo, as well as companies, individual companies we reached out to in Waterloo, Vancouver, and Montreal. So not truly cross Canada, but certainly broader than Ottawa. And I'm thrilled to report that we had 50 survey responses. Gainsight had done a similar survey probably 2 weeks before and got 41. And so it was our goal to kind of beat that, and we actually did. And that gives us a real chance to compare results. So I'm pretty proud of the team for that. So I'm going to share the demographics with you, and then I'm going to ask you in Slido to predict the results of what you think happened. So this is the profile of the folks who answered the survey, really evenly split between how long the companies had been in business. Some young, 2 to 4, you can see the split here, 5 to 10 and 10 plus. Again, in terms of company annual revenue, really both ends of the spectrum represented. And so if you look here at the bottom, half of this survey was answered by companies that are under 5 million in revenue. So smaller companies, newer companies that are still growing and scaling quickly. And then the other half is represented by higher revenue companies, a full quarter almost, over 20 million. When we look at annual contract value, which is one of the ways we slice the data later, again, we have a pretty broad mix of ACV represented in our survey. About a quarter of ACV is under 5K. And then another full quarter is over 100K. So we have good representation on each end of the spectrum, and then everything in between. Where we have no diversity at all is on B2C or B2B. It's 100% B2B responses. And so as we're looking at this, please keep that in mind. We also looked at what industries were predominantly answering the question, because again, we want to know, with churn and retention, industry is going to play, or at least our assumption, that would play a big role. And so the top 4 industries represented were high tech, professional services, healthcare and health tech, and retail. And you can see there's some others as well, some manufacturing, supply chain, but those top 4 really made up the bulk of the respondents. Okay, so this is where I would like you to go over to Slido. I'm also going to bring it up on my screen. And I want you to try and predict the results. Now that you know who answered the survey, what do you think survey respondents expect in terms of the gross revenue retention in the quarter or 2 post-COVID? So in terms of their revenue renewals, no upsells, no cross-sells, just straight renewal revenue. And there's 4 options here. Just pick the one that you think is the most likely. And I'm going to dance a little bit and go over to the live results. And we will answer.
Lauren, I don't see the quiz. When I go to the polls,
you might need to publish that poll.
Yes, so here's what I'm doing now.
Okay.
Perfect.
There it is.
There it is. Perfect.
Okay, good. Thank you. This is, inaugural inaugural Slido session. There we go. And are you seeing the results on my screen or only yours? Let's see.
Not on your screen yet.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
You see them once you reply.
Yeah.
What's the Slido code again?
It is 43874.
43874. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. So now you should be seeing the live data on my screen as well. Yeah, good. So there's a mix of answers. Excellent. The bulk of people in the first one, 19 people have answered. Okay. Give you another sec.
It's such a cool little tool, eh?
Fun.
Brad, you're not allowed to answer. You know the answers.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing that. You can still see it coming in on your phones. Oh, Pablo, so good to see you. I can see you've got the video working too. Thank you. That's great. Let me go back and share the slides so that you can see that. All right. Perfect. So everyone who answered number 1 was absolutely correct. That is what our data showed. And I took some liberties and rounded a little bit. But what we're looking at here is GRR expectations in the quarter or two post-COVID. And you can see that, you know, for the most part, almost 60% of our sample said they expect GRR to go down. There are some bright spots. And I put up, you know, there are 3 companies in particular in this sample who expected their GRR to go up. Almost 40% expected it to stay the same. And so then what we did is just drilled in and said, well, what's driving that? Is it company size, annual revenue? Is it ACV? Is it industry vertical? What's behind that? And so we looked at the data by company annual revenue. And I also called out the sample size here. Again, we have small numbers here down for these green segments, but really the top and the bottom of company annual revenue, you know, yes, they looked somewhat different, but there were still some bright spots of companies with the lowest annual revenue. And what was interesting is when we drilled in, this company here was a health tech company, health tech, health services. And so their vertical was really causing them to be optimistic towards the future. Up here, there was one in professional services of these 2 that were looking for growth for the future, and another one was very broadly, was very diverse and distributed. They had business in multiple industry verticals, which, you know, my assumption is that's helping them weather the storm a little bit. We also drilled in, and this is the study that I referred to that Gainsight did. They released their results on April 1st, and so what they looked at was expected GRR decrease by the annual contract value of the SaaS, you know, subscriptions. And so what they found was that the smaller the annual, the ACV, the higher or the bigger the anticipated decrease. And presumably because, you know, it might be smaller, medium businesses, SMBs who are buying those, who are more vulnerable themselves. And so we're really interested to see, do our numbers in Canada show the same trend? I also put some context in here, IMF, if you're interested, global contraction 3% this year, just for context. But for our Canadian data, the SaaSCan data shows a very, very similar trend. And what's interesting is we actually, our bands skew lower. The average company in our study is smaller, and you know, my assumption, Gainsight's big, Gainsight sells to larger companies. Their highest band for ACV is over 500K. We put ours at over 100K, and our lowest band was less than 1K. And what we saw though was a very similar trend. Certainly the GRR decrease is driven by vertical, as we saw earlier, but by ACV to a very large degree. The decreases anticipated are much larger at the smaller end of the scale. Got some numbers over here too from StatsCan just out yesterday. No one really knows. They are finding it hard to predict the running scenarios, but in March, GDP overall, they estimate fell by about 9%. Okay, so that's on GRR. We also took a look at, oh, this is just another view of the same thing. So here we were looking at the lower the ACV, the bigger the fall. Here we looked at it, you know, just a different way, and it really stands out. Companies with higher ACVs are much more likely to experience GRR going up, as shown by these 2 pies, versus companies on the lower end of the spectrum, right? Under 5K ACV, really 82% of them are expecting GRR to go down. So quite dramatic when you look at that. NRR, so if we take into account renewals, upsell, cross-sell, the picture is slightly more optimistic. And, you know, we have a sample size of, you know, we had 45 overall answered this particular question, but of those, 7 different companies are expecting NRR to increase post-COVID. And so again, I drilled into the verticals. 3 of these are in healthcare, health tech, 2 are in high tech, 1 is in media and entertainment. Think about how much Netflix and media we're watching. And another is in professional services. So industry verticals absolutely playing a role there. In terms of the NRR, the about the same, staying flat slice of the pie. Higher education was one of these, taking higher education online, a company that does that. Media and entertainment again, supply chain. I mean, think of the supply chain issues that are going on right now. And then some pro services and high tech. So again, really highly linked to industry vertical. Not so much by company annual revenue. We did the analysis again. It's all over the map. Some of the lowest annual company revenues are anticipating the highest increases in NRR. Again, I'm going to attribute that to the industry vertical that they're working in. Okay. We also compared our results. So here's what it looks like from the US data from Gainsight. This is now NRR sliced by the ACV band. And their results weren't as dramatic here, 15.8% decrease in the lowest tier, 12.5 in the biggest tier. They saw some, less dramatic reductions in the middle. Ours was much more straight line in the Canadian data, showing that really the biggest decreases were felt by the lower tiers of ACV, and it was a little more moderated in the upper tiers. But even still, our deepest, decrease in expectation, 11% compared to almost 16. There's some optimism in terms of being able to expand the customers that are in a good spot in those verticals I mentioned. Okay. So what are people doing about it? What we asked on the survey was, and we gave people a list, and then we asked for text fill-in answers. What actions are companies actually taking? And so here were the top 4 answers. 72% are reaching out and doing really aggressive renewal management, looking at whose renewals are coming up, how can they work with customers proactively to prevent churn. Closely tied to the last one, but we'll come back to that. 59%, almost 60% are preparing, if you will, a menu of options to help customers that are struggling right now, so that they're prepared and have a preset list of options to work from. 52% are reaching out to customers with high usage and adoption. And my assumption here is that that's what's driving some of the optimism around the NRR number, that they'll be able to increase, perhaps there's an upsell or an expansion opportunity there, and they're looking to uncover those. And then lastly, which was a little counterintuitive to me, I thought this would be the top answer on the board, but really just stack ranking customers on some set criteria to figure out where should we focus more or less effort. Certainly renewals is one of those factors, but other factors may come into play too. Usage, adoption, they're sort of reflected, but that was the 4th answer on the board. And then we asked for type in comments. I've provided those in the backup and we'll share those out, but really there were 4 themes that came through in those. And the first one was just doing everything you can to foster client relationships. So I'll read you a quote. We're reaching out to customers to see what they'd like to focus on during this time. What did they want to do? Training, usage, building resources, etc. Taking this opportunity just to talk to their customers, listen, and really build relationships. The second was around providing added value. And these little ticks just mean the number of people who said that. So 3 responses said, we're doing stuff with our product, either a very specific COVID offering, or we're totally reprioritizing our roadmap to give clients, features that are stickier, that are more valuable to them now. 2 said we're giving free services, we're offering tune-ups, we're offering additional services to help re-onboard and accelerate their value. A couple of folks said we're offering financial relief, so we're being more aggressive with discounts. We are offering temporary billing suspensions when needed and longer payment terms. And then lastly, some of the companies that are growing the most said, we're just scrambling to onboard and drive adoption more efficiently. And we're really looking to make sure that that's effective and we're nurturing all those new customers. Okay, so here is a chance, and we should pause for some questions that are coming in. I'm gonna do my switcheroo and get the Slido poll open so you can enter your comments. So just give me a sec to do that. And I will get this other one in here. Okay, so would really love to take your comments on what are you doing? Are you seeing traction on any techniques that you're doing right now to minimize churn, maximize retention, engage with your customers? Whoops, I'm going to go back to this one.
Not sure if we've got any questions coming in on the chat.
Okay.
Man.
Okay, no worries. You can always pick it up in in the meeting chat itself after. Then what I'll do is just switch gears here. We're going to move over to our CEO perspectives. Hopefully that's helpful. I mean, really my big takeaways are it's driven by industry vertical, it's driven by ACV, and there are some productive actions that we can take, as you saw listed in the survey, to make the best if there is a downturn. Okay, so let me switch gears, and Allan, I'm going to put you on kind of speaker spotlight here once I get back to that.
Yep, sounds good.
Your video will show up. Yeah, so you should be maximized on everybody's screen now.
Yeah, sounds good with our nice SaaSOttawa CSCX
Yes.
fancy Zoom background.
Yes.
Of course, it's reversed, Allan, I think.
Yours looks backwards for me, for whatever
Mine
reason.
does.
Yeah, so does Paul at Brad's. Yeah. Anyway.
Mine looks perfect for me, so.
It's the mirror problem.
Oh, that's weird. That's very weird. So anyhow, so, just figure it out. So yeah, why don't I give a few of my perspectives, explain what we're seeing and what we're doing. So I think first maybe just a few notes on the data. I think it is really interesting to sort of see those, and we should probably pause to sort of just see the differences in the way the smaller companies and also the companies that have smaller ACV. There really seems to be a difference there, right? And if you think about that, the smaller companies that have lower ACV, they're probably going after smaller size companies as well, so more SMB. Those SMBs are probably harder hit as well. There may be more companies that really are seeing a revenue impact because of COVID and really need to cut costs immediately. And the other massive difference, of course, is that as soon as you increase your ACV, that usually goes along with having annual or even multi-year contracts. And I can share some data that we're seeing as well, because we sell both monthly and annual, and the differences are stark. So I think that the companies that are not seeing that much of an impact, the ones that are selling for larger dollar figures, they probably have a much more disproportionate number of folks that have annual or multi-year contracts. And we don't have that in the data, Lauren, but I suspect that that is something that they're benefiting from. So just for some context on our business, and I'll share with you what we're seeing and what we're doing. We sell to thousands of mostly SMBs. We typically consider our customers, between 50 and 250 employees, but we have big customers as well, like Walmart and Aviva, et cetera. But usually they're teams within those companies. For the most part, we also have monthly accounts, monthly recurring billing contracts. More and more, we're trying to push annual, and that's certainly helping. But I think those are the things that sort of gives you a sense of where our customers are and how they're sort of being impacted by this. So I can tell you that what we've seen over the past 4 or 5 weeks, it really, for us, we noticed it all starting kind of that midweek, March 11th. And March 11th was when the WHO declared that it was a pandemic. I think that was also the same day that the US closed its borders. And we could really see that churn was really starting to be impacted on that day. And if we take a look at the following 3 weeks, we really saw just a tremendous amount of cost cutting. So the weeks of March 16th, 23rd, and 30th. And if you remember the news, there was really, we had not flattened the curve yet. There was, increasing anxiety about how long is this going to be and how bad is this going to be, and government support was just starting to roll out. So those first 3 weeks, 16th to the week of the 30th, were really what we saw, probably the worst weeks. Since then, April 6th onwards, we've actually started seeing churn stabilize and come back to not normal levels yet, but certainly much, much better than what we had. I can tell you that the churn, so downgrades and cancellations combined, was 2 times what we were normally seeing on a weekly basis. So this was a significant impact. And if we take a look at net dollar retention, so if we take a look at upgrades as well, upgrades were impacted, but probably not by a lot. So I would say on average, we were seeing those probably at the 80% of normal, whereas downgrades and cancellations were 2 times the normal rate. I know this study is not about new MRR, but I can tell you as well that in those first 3 weeks, new MRR went down to about 60% of what was normal. So 60% of normal plus 2 times the churn numbers does not make for a happy team. So what I can say is that over the past 2 weeks, we've certainly seen that increase nicely. So what is interesting, and I mentioned it just a second ago, that if I segment the annual versus the monthly contracts, the annual is almost flat. So we saw a little bit of change, but it is really, really insulated from sort of the day-to-day movement that you can have with a monthly. So again, it's the monthlies that accounted for the bulk of the negative movement inside of our customer base. And I think that's important to note too. I mean, a lot of these government subsidies that have been coming out, they've really been not targeted for subscription-based companies. So I think for everybody on the call today, I think for the most part, you're going to be SaaS or subscription type companies. And I think one of the things that we should be very cautious about is that even if we're not seeing a tremendous change in our revenue levels month to month, and the government talks about, you can apply to these programs if you've had 15 or 30% revenue drop, but a recurring revenue business probably won't see that. It would have to be tremendously horrific for a subscription-based business to have that kind of a drop from one month to the next. But I would caution, and I would say model it out, because I think that an MRR type business is going to have a long period of decline, and then it's going to take longer for a subscription type business to bounce back as well. It's just the nature of the way the recurring revenue model works. It provides stability, so we're not going to see any kind of V-shaped bounce back, but it does allow things to happen more slowly, which is a good thing. But it's also something that's going to take a lot longer to get back. I am actually modeling a revenue drop for the end of the year. I'm making sure that we can survive and can handle a revenue drop that is 25%. So I think that's significant, but I think that's something that a lot of leadership teams should really seriously look at. And can the company sustain that type of a change in revenue over the long term? So as far as what actions are we taking? So a lot of customers are calling in, and those that do want to cancel or those that do want to downgrade, we're really trying to empathize. We're really trying to support them. We've long had a program that allows customers to pause their accounts. So in the cancellation flow, we have a step that says, just after they've said that they want to cancel, we say, well, are you sure, or would you prefer to put your account on pause? And the pause is, something like $10 a month to keep their account active. that program has been very successful in keeping accounts from fully canceling and keeping them there. And we are then following up with them, making sure that they've got everything they need. And short of that, the other thing that we are doing is if somebody really needs to cancel, we're saying, listen, how about we extend 3 months for free? And then at the end of that 3-month period, we're going to turn your account on again. And what's really cool is that in times of financial stress, we've worked with our vendors to ask for relief. If we can extend that to our customers, it's amazing. Like they're so positive, they're so thankful for that. So I think as your business can sustain that, and you can try to do the right thing for your customers long term, I would certainly encourage that kind of behavior. The other thing that we're doing, this learning that the annual plans are so resilient, we're really trying to push for any new business that is coming in. And again, the new business is down, like it's performing at about 60 to 70%. We're really, really pushing annual contracts. Now that might be counterintuitive, and I thought when we first said, let's start really pushing them, I thought, hey, you know what? In this time of uncertainty, most people are going to want to go monthly. But we've had upwards of 60, 70% of people taking annual. So that's comforting, knowing that we have some stability there. And I think in general, I would encourage SaaS businesses to really think about how can they incent people to go to annual plans. I think on the company side, we've had to make some very difficult decisions. So we have had to cut staff, which is tremendously hard and difficult. I think a lot of companies have had to do that. We've had to go to 80% salary for the staff. I'm amazed and thankful that they all understand and they're committed to the success of the company. But I think cash is in an uncertain time and a business where we can expect some downturn. I think cash and profit is absolutely paramount. I think that's the thing to focus on for the next 9 months. I think most of us are probably more familiar with growth type business models where you're burning cash. I think the real focus now in this environment is cash. So put growth on the back burner and put profit or cash preservation, front of mind. So I think that's important. And then I think, if I were to have any advice or any sort of silver linings that are coming out of this, similar to what I said early on and what Pablo said as well, I think there are tremendous opportunities that come out of these times. We've been in business for a long time, and we've seen the 2008 recession, and we survived that, and we had to focus, and I think we came out of it stronger. I think the same is true today. I think this is an opportunity for us to really look at, what are we doing? What are we focused on? How do we really sharpen that position? Simplify everything, our processes, our automation, and make sure that we can survive and do so, coming out of this stronger. So we're not out of the woods yet. But I think if companies really focus on the right things and simplify, oftentimes they do come out of these situations much, much stronger. So we're certainly planning on doing exactly that. Knock on wood. So there you go. So Lauren, I'll hand it over to you, or maybe we can go right to Paul.
Yeah, thank you so much, Allan. Yeah, so let's go right to Paul. And again, we're looking at challenges, opportunities, actions, anything you want to share with this group, Paul, would be really helpful.
Sure. Okay, well, maybe just a bit of background. So I've been in the remote work enablement business for my entire career. So I founded a company here in Ottawa called Pythian in 1997. Pythian, obviously, just to echo some of Allan's comments, also went through the 2001 .com crash, where most of our customers were .coms at the time, and also went through the 2008-2009 economic catastrophe, certainly affecting a lot of our customers at the time. So we are no strangers to difficult times. However, as you might imagine, it is a unique tailwind for remote work enablement software like ours to be faced with this moment in time when almost everyone who is an office worker is being required to work remote. In September of last year, I separated Pythian into two businesses. So Tehama is now a completely independent business, and Tehama is the software that permitted Pythian to exist. So Pythian at the time of the transaction had about 230 people working from home in 150 cities all over the world, and connecting to some of the world's most valuable data infrastructure, since Pythian is a data-centric services business. So the quick update for our business is that these are tailwinds for us, but the customer's use case has completely changed from the use case that we built our product for. So our use case was always for smaller deployments for service providers. The relationship between the service provider and an enterprise exhibits very low trust, not for cynical reasons, just because that's the dynamic at play. So when you're permitting a third party to access your customer's data, you're justifiably increasingly paranoid versus your own home workers. That means that a lot of our tooling was very security and compliance oriented. We've always thought about remote work business as about access first and foremost, and we do a very good job of that. But then around observability, and we do our observability in our platform mostly around security and compliance use cases that are not really relevant to when you're enabling your own workforce to work from home. And then the other buying motions for remote work are around management tooling and support, things like Monday.com or ServiceNow. We're not in that space at all. And around collaboration, things like Zoom or Microsoft Teams or Google Meet or Office 365, and then we're not in that space at all. So what we do focus on in our use cases, focus on the CIO's requirements, and they've all changed through this as well. So CIOs have, in our market, used to be primarily focused on security, privacy, and data loss prevention, compliance, and data residency. Those are all way low on their agenda right now as they're going through this emergency deployment phase. And that gives me some concerns around the security. And I don't think people are thinking about security of remote work enough. That being said, things that were never really that important in our model, like such as the ease and speed of adoption that we do well at, are now very, very important to the buyer. Same with remote manageability and provisioning. So the ability to manage a team remotely without ever touching anyone or shipping them any product has really gone up in terms of importance. And so has elasticity. The ability to scale back down when the workers go back in the office now matters a lot, and it was never part of our buying motions before. Finally, and this is, I think, on topic to a lot of people in the room, our buyers are also thinking a lot more about cost than ever before. A lot of them are having to deal with this emergency while broke and while dealing with enormous revenue strain themselves. And so imagine if you're an airline and you need to enable your office workers to all work from home instead of the way that they're used to working, you do not have spare money. And so the cost of the solution is now increasingly a very, very important component of their decision-making process, where never was before. So in general, I would say we're facing some tailwinds, but we're also being required to pivot very, very fast on what we're building, because while the deals coming at us are larger than ever before, our product is also, it requires tooling in order to focus on the cost of delivery and the remote manageability and the ease and speed of adoption. Fortunately, we've already built these privacy and data loss prevention and compliance and security and data residency capabilities. So when they come back on the agenda, we'll be well positioned. But right now, we have to focus on other things in our product. And pivoting like that is a big deal. It's creating a lot of, I would say, internal concerns, because roadmaps are very difficult to negotiate and priority setting is very difficult to establish, and engineering teams require a certain amount of clarity and coherence in their efforts in order to feel like they're being successful. And a huge pivot like this on an emergency basis is difficult for them to ingest, and it's difficult for our product and engineering teams to reconcile. That being said, I would say that this event is going to change our society's work culture permanently. I do think that the fact that every enterprise has more or less been required to enable its office workers to work from home is going to permanently catalyze a change in the perception of remote work. And I'm excited about that and the opportunity that poses for our business. I also want to talk and maybe echo some of Allan's comments about what reopening is going to look like and what SaaS businesses should anticipate as a result of what we think is going to happen as reopening occurs. So Prime Minister Trudeau and Premier Ford have both described the reopening as a very gradual relaxing of the description of what is essential to permit more and more work to occur, but doing so in a slow and gradual way so that we have time to observe the impact of those decisions on the pressure on our healthcare system, so that our healthcare system can ingest the case load implications of how we are relaxing the valve. If that's the case, then I would anticipate that this trend around the kinds of businesses that are permitted to operate normally versus the kinds of businesses that are either not permitted to operate at all or are permitted to operate but in an altered or amended mode is going to continue through the entire summer and possibly for as long as a year or longer. So what that means is that I'm not expecting, for example, restaurants to be back at full seating anytime soon. I'm not expecting cinemas or Sens games to be back on our normal routine anytime soon. I think those are some of the last things to go back to normal through this whole thing. However, I am expecting a lot of what is currently like forbidden from happening to go back online. And what that means is, like, for example, kitchen renos are going to come back on stream. Lawn maintenance services are going to be permitted in time for spring. These kinds of things are all going to kind of start happening on a routine basis. So those of you who are selling to small businesses should be thinking now about what is the order of the small businesses that are going to come back on stream, and what are their needs going to be as they re-enable and re-engage their customer base. So the other piece I would say is, as an entrepreneur who has been through a couple downturns, I would just, and I'm sure that Pablo is going to reinforce this much better, but I believe that right now cash matters a lot. And anything that you can do, even if you are successful and you have money available, anything you can do to extend your runway is extremely valuable right now. And that's because ultimately you do not want to fundraise anytime in the next 2 years. If you are going to be required to raise new capital anytime in the next 2 years, that is going to hurt a lot. If you look at the history of fundraising in Canada or in the United States that I both reviewed in the last week, you'll see that any fundraising that happens within, I would say, 18 months to 2 years of this kind of transition from bull market to a bear market happens at a much lower average deal size than ever before. And with generally, what that means is if the deal volume is roughly the same, but the deal sizes are smaller, it means that your next fundraising round will permit you to have less runway, which means you're going to have to cut costs anyway to get it. And the other thing is that the valuations will be lower. And so if you want to wait for valuations to be like the way that they were in December, you're going to have to wait a couple of years for that to happen. Otherwise, you're in this market, and this market is going to be at relatively lower valuations and demanding a different cost model for your cash burn moving forwards. The sooner that you react to that reality, the better. If you react to it just in time for your deal to close in 18 months, then ultimately the two things happen. The first one is you're going to have to cut the costs then anyway. And the second one is you're going to be fundraising on a much lower valuation expectation because of your cash burn. And you're going to be forced to cut them at that point anyway. So those are kind of some insights around how I look at the funding context and what an entrepreneur should be thinking about as we try to navigate our businesses through these next 2 years.
Yeah, fantastic insights, Paul. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you generously sharing that. You're clearly pivoting big time right now, so good luck to you and your team and all of Tehama as you do that.
Thank you. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Yeah. was going to suggest people bring a drink. It is a Friday afternoon. I hope if
It's just grapefruit juice, but yeah.
probably most people do. Probably that's great. I did not. So we're going to move over to Pablo now and start on financial perspectives. I'm going to just make your screen kind of, I can do a spotlight video. So Pablo, we're seeing you bigger. And I'm going to bring your slides up and share those with people here. So just give me a sec to do some tap dancing. And okay. We should just double check that we can hear you. Can you just do a little audio? I'm going to go try and find the mic and unmute Pablo because I'm not hearing yet. Okay, let me try something else.
Are you mute? I think you're muted, Pablo.
Yeah, I'm trying, and I'm seeing if I can unmute. Let me go to the participant list. Where's that? Participants. All right, let me just try this. Hang on a sec. I don't want to show all this stuff.
You know, Pablo, I don't know if you can hear me at all, but it looks like you're more than muted. It looks like you didn't connect your audio to your app. So on your app, if you're dialed in, then we'll have to find your dial in, or if you're using the app, then you're going to have to enable audio on it.
Yeah, I did. I don't know why.
There we go. Now we can hear you.
Can you
We hear you now.
Okay,
Yeah,
look
it's
at that.
perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, great.
All
I'm going
right.
to make your slides big here. And
Thank you.
yeah, take it away. Thank you for all the troubleshooting help we've got. All right.
All right, it's the new reality. This is what the world looks like now. So thanks a lot for having me here. Really happy to share my thoughts and Mistral's thoughts and generally, you know, the venture community's thoughts. Not that I can speak for everyone, but obviously, you know, as VC, I've been, you know, chatting with a lot of other investors in the startup community, especially in Canada, and kind of seeing how they're thinking about it. So happy to relay that information to everyone that's part of the SaaS community in Ottawa and broader. So I can't control the slides. Could you go to the next? Okay, perfect. So just, I guess at a high level, I wanted to maybe just start with how we at Mistral are looking at the current shock. You know, the first thing to look at, obviously, COVID is just a huge shock to the system, right? And as I kind of said in my intro there, you know, at a high level, it's pretty obvious that the effect on total demand is massive, and it's massive. It's a massive decrease, right? It's a clear net negative as businesses are forced to close and can't sell goods, and they have to lay off employees, and employees are stuck at home and they can't buy. That's just, you know, demand decreasing. But the interesting piece for us, at least, is that it's not just, you know, like everything is down. What's also happened as you zoom in at a more micro level is just demand has radically shifted. Demand is lower, but it's also shifted. And the shift means that for some industries, they went from whatever they were to zero, like travel, tourism, and other industries actually accelerated as a result. And for the most part, those industries are, you know, some form of technology. Specifically, what we've noticed is, unlike other hits, like if you think about 2008 or like take 2000, I mean, 2000, if anything, hit tech companies more than other companies. 2008 was a pretty broad macroeconomic shock that I wouldn't say hit every industry equally, but it hit, you know, basically all industries. This one of the interesting pieces of it is that tech laggards are getting hit a lot more than early adopters. If you think about restaurants that didn't have a solid delivery, and you can see this, you know, there's some restaurants that are already on all 3 or 4 platforms. Well, the second restaurant's closed, they knew how to operate that, right? They were already used to that kind of world. The ones that had resisted, you know, having a delivery option for whatever reason, right or wrong, they got hit a lot more hard and had to react faster. Same thing with retailers that hadn't invested properly in e-commerce. Those are the ones really suffering. And you can imagine those board meetings, right? Now saying, okay, well, we have to go all in on e-commerce, right? Enterprises and we focus mainly at Mistral on business-to-business software, enterprise software. And, that's a world where you see industries that are just, they're still using a lot of paper-based processes, a lot of human-intensive processes that could be automated, that for whatever reason, the automation, the digitization piece never made the top of their priority list. Well, guess what? Today, it's at the top of the list, right? The sort of things that were nice to haves are not nice to haves anymore. They're must-haves, right? And so another way to put this is that effectively, like in terms of how we think about it, this is a forced global trial of a bunch of technology tools. And you can, like, just to kind of imagine in your own business, if you could force 100 customers to trial your software, nothing else, you just force them to trial it. Well, that some percentage of those are going to convert to long-time paying customers. In other words, it's going to accelerate the adoption of your technology long-term. And that's what we believe how this is playing out. Take a school, for example, like, go tell a school like Algonquin College that you guys should run everything online. I mean, that's at the bottom of the pile. They'll slowly trial that out, and it'll take years and years. Well, COVID happens, and 4 weeks later, every single class is online, period. And then they realize, whatever problems exist. But what they also realize is, like, actually deploying technology is not that bad if you just decide to do it. You can do it. And so that's the kind of stuff that we don't think is going to go back to the way it used to be. In other words, the trends that were already happening in terms of tech adoption, like take e-commerce. E-commerce is already a growing space. But now when all retailers have to shift all their mindset to e-commerce because that's all they've got left, well, as COVID, dies down in 6, 12, 18 months, we don't believe that they're just going to go back to, not caring about e-commerce anymore, right? The cat's sort of out of the bag. And then the other interesting piece to note is just like how unclear and how unprecedented this is. Obviously, a global pandemic like this is pretty unprecedented, or at least haven't happened in, let's say 100 years, Spanish flu being the last kind of reasonable example. But the other piece that I think is important, at least that we think about, is just the reaction from the governments, right? Like this amount of fiscal stimulus and monetary stimulus, the amount of money that's being printed, all these programs that are happening so quickly. Like if you think about 2008, it took them a while to put out the program they put out to try and rescue banks. In this case, like within a week, everything was out and all the money was pumped into the system. What is the net effect of that, right? How does that actually play out? Anyone that tells you that they know is just lying, because this is completely new. And so that creates a very noisy environment from an investment perspective. Could you go to the next slide, please? So what do we think is an opportunity of all this, right? What's kind of, how are we looking at this? And we've, I think, touched on this already. I believe Allan and Paul were kind of talking about this. But anyways, in terms of enterprises, there was always kind of this, one of the pitches I get a lot is, here's some new tech, some new process, and I sell it to an enterprise, and ultimately it makes things more efficient. Some process, some piece of work more efficient. A lot of times those were kind of nice to haves. We think that goes from a nice to have to a must have in an environment where your revenues are extremely constrained, and the only thing you can really do is try and cut costs. Future work just got super accelerated. It was a hot topic for a while. Remote work, that entire trend is not going away. But now again, everybody was forced to try it. So those who won't like it will come back, but a lot of people will decide they like it and they'll stay, or they'll do a 1 or 2 days work from home sort of situation. E-commerce, same thing we've spoken about, and security again, because of all the issues that this new reality imposes, we believe also can kind of accelerate from this. Next slide, please. So what are we doing about it, and what are we advising our companies to do? The first one we've touched on, I think, already, which is just drastically reforecasting revenue and looking at those extremely pessimistic scenarios, because again, we just don't know how this is going to last. Once we start openings up, will that be smooth, or will there be waves where we then go back into lockdown? It's unclear, and you want to be prepared for a pretty bad scenario, which means you definitely, all the talk of focusing on cash is clearly the right thing to do. Finding new growth opportunities, of course. From internally, how VCs are go to what Paul's saying in terms of fundraising. The first month it was just kind of freeze everything, don't do any new deals, try and figure out what's going on. Now, VCs fall into two different buckets. I mean, the ones that just raised a fund in the last year or so, they've got capital to spend, and they're going to spend it, but they're going to do it with being more opportunistic. They know that they're in a privileged spot and that the competition is kind of, say 60, 80%, 50% of what it used to be. And so that's going to push prices down. That's going to increase their pricing power, so to speak. Because what a lot of VCs are doing that having just raised a fund is they're deciding to maybe do fewer deals, and certainly they're doubling down on their own portfolio because they know that outside rounds are going to be harder to get. And so internal rounds take, kind of a higher priority. So that's how kind of we've been reacting. And just quickly in terms of, because we have about 20 companies in our portfolio, I can tell you, about a third of them have had to do some sort of RIF, right? Some sort of reduction in force, or going to, a fraction of, your previous salaries 4 days a week. So some sort of spend reduction. The other thing I thought though that was interesting, because I know we're talking a lot about retention and what you can do with your customers. I think one of the interesting things to note about that wage subsidy program is that, you can, just high level, like, because we had this debate internally, so just quickly share it, like, when should you try and leverage this wage subsidy program? Obviously, if your revenues just clearly are down by 15, 30%, just like that, you're obviously going to leverage it. But there's other situations, again, because you're in a subscription type business, where you might not necessarily see that kind of happening right away. It might take longer. The point of these, the way we've thought about it, because there's been a lot of board discussions about, because there's a lot of things you can do to be eligible. And the reality is the wage subsidies are there in order to protect the economy, right? They're there to help you as a company keep working and to keep you from firing employees and keep them at work, which is just good for all stakeholders, right? So what we've kind of, to get specific, if you are in a vertical that's drastically affected by this, let's say it's retail, hospitality, travel, but you haven't necessarily yet seen that hit, but it's coming. Like, that hit is coming. Get proactive about it, right? Talk to your customers about it. Try and understand when their renewals are coming up, what they're thinking about doing, and factor in that wage subsidy in the sense that if in 3 months, somebody's going to not be able to pay you and they're going to have to cancel the contract, should you wait 3 months and then risk maybe the wage subsidy not being there anymore? Or do you say, well, let's just defer your payment now, right? And then you can maybe leverage the wage subsidy and keep your entire employees and keep your entire customers. Because that's really what the government's ultimately trying to do, is trying to not make this spiral down, so that as things come back up, we don't have to go employ, everybody. And the final thing you can do is pivots. We've seen a lot of pivots. The most obvious one, like Spartan Bioscience, their entire company to something COVID related. But two others that I thought, I'll quickly mention, because I think they're less intuitive. One of them, a company in our portfolio called Relogix, they used to sell sensors to measure utilization of office space. Well, obviously nobody's in the office, so that whole Valley prop leaves. But they've shifted to now say, well, as we relax all these constraints and people come back to work, you're going to want to have visibility into where people are seated. If people are seated too close, you're going to have different protocols. And so all of a sudden, they make their platform relevant again. So those are the sort of things that you want to try and readjust to make your value prop try to resonate. And not everybody can do this, that's the reality. But if you can, try and find that value prop that may resonate in this current climate.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, thanks so much, Pablo, for taking time to put these insights together and share with us. We're going to take questions at the end. There are a few that have come in through Slido, but I'd like to take those at the end just to make sure we have a chance, Darryl, for you to share your thoughts. So I'm going to go over and make Darryl our spotlight video and stop sharing this slide deck. Okay, good. So can someone just confirm you're not seeing Pablo's slides anymore and you are seeing Darryl? We're good?
Yeah,
okay.
for better or for worse.
And we can hear you too, so double
Okay.
bonus. All right. What are
Good.
you seeing and what are your thoughts, Darryl?
Sure. Well, Lauren, thank you and everyone for putting this together. I think it's a great opportunity to share ideas. When this whole COVID thing hit, essentially all of us who do my job, commercial account manager, we started calling our clients. We just started calling them to essentially say, what can we do? What do you need? How can we help? And as you can imagine, the tone of those conversations has shifted from when we started roughly 4 weeks ago to now. As it happened, just before all these COVID measures were put into place, I had a meeting with a client on the Friday before March break for all of us. And I was actually away for the week of March break. So I I had my one last meeting, I tied everything off, I went away for a week and came back to all of this. So it was an interesting shift. What we've really seen kind of depends on which vertical you're working in. I work in our technology banking branch, the KBI branch, in case you know it. We've seen a lot of good situations for clients. By that I mean, situations where clients haven't lost 95% of their business. But we are seeing some of that. Of course, my colleagues who work in the restaurants and retail sectors are seeing a totally different scenario. Clients who are in the healthcare space are seeing some interesting switches too. I mean, dentists are, always seen as a sort of a safe place, but they're working on emergencies only and nothing else. So they're seeing revenue drops. It really does depend on sort of which vector, which sector you're in, and then within that vertical, which sort of niche you're in. I myself, I've had clients who have had 100% growth. March in 2020 was 100% better than March in 2019. And I've had clients who've had 95% drops in their payroll, or 95% drops in their revenue. They've done layoffs, they've done firings, they've done salary reductions across the board for their employees, and they're wondering if what tomorrow's going to bring to them. So it's really been a bit of a mixed bag, and that's just because we see so much of the economy with RBC that we see clients in all situations. One thing that's been really interesting that we've seen a lot of, particularly our clients in what we call supply chain, really anyone who's involved with building anything, shipping anything, or storing anything. Those people are really, we're seeing a lot of, I'll call it creativity on their part. They're spending a lot of time looking at, what can we actually do? And even though we usually spend all of our energy doing one thing, maybe we can repurpose that and do something different. And that's what we've seen a lot in clients who are doing very well, for clients who don't happen to be in an industry that's doing really well right now, like anything related to remote working, anything related to the healthcare space, any clients who are outside of that, those who are doing the best are the ones who have essentially repurposed what their capacity lets them do. We've had clients who are in transportation, who have large facilities to maintain their trucks. They're seeing reductions in their transportation business in some spaces. So they've repurposed their own internal maintenance facility to be essentially a sanitation facility for other people's trucks. We've seen clients who have, much like Pablo was just talking about with his client, their software does one thing, but if you step back and look at it from a different perspective, you can make it do something else, and you can make it do something else that clients actually need right now. So clients who've got that creativity, we're seeing a lot of success for them. That said, we've got a lot of clients who the number one moment during this entire 4 weeks where my phone just blew up was when the Prime Minister announced that $40,000 program. I had clients calling me literally 5 minutes at the end of his press conference saying, how do I get this money? And of course, it wasn't possible to answer that, and that just got turned on just this past week. That program's now seen almost $8 billion get pushed out across all the banks to their clients. So it's a great program. You saw the criteria for eligibility on that program got expanded just 2 days ago. And again, that's the second biggest time that my phone exploded, was when the criteria changed on that and everyone said, how do I access it? So there are some government programs that we're seeing put into use that are actually of great benefit to clients right now. We, like just about everyone else out there, are sitting here waiting for the final details on the announced EDC program and then the sort of companion BDC program. We hope that those are being announced. If they're not being announced today, then it's early next week. But those are very close to being announced. So if you're wondering, how long do I have to wait for all this stuff to get turned on? The CEBA program is open. The BDC and EDC, hopefully it's next week or the week after. The 75% wage subsidy it's in progress. It's coming. And we're starting to look at interesting options for clients. Biggest trends we've seen in the past last 2-3 weeks has really been the drive to digital. We have clients who have all different perspectives on financials. Some people were, sworn to, we're never going to move off of checks ever because I like that certainty of having the ability to sign the check. We've seen clients who resisted digital for a long time who are now saying, I don't want to keep going to the branch to deposit my checks. How can I deposit them online virtually? Sort of further to what Pablo said when he sort of talked about Algonquin College, people are sort of realizing that the drive to digital for your banking is actually a lot easier than people thought it would be, and it's been very beneficial for people. We've also seen some interesting comments from clients who have seen essentially a culture change, whereas a lot of, and particularly in our technology vertical, a lot of clients had work from home policies, and a lot of them openly embraced it. But at the end of the day, we're hearing from our clients that, there was still a lot of sort of informal cultural pushback against working from home. Why didn't we see you at the office this week? Why weren't you here? Everyone else was here. Oh, I was working from home. Were you really working? Sort of that unspoken sort of culture. And they're all talking about how that has shifted, mostly because it had to. But it's shifted. And so, everyone's sort of realizing that working from home, sort of like, is it hard to adopt digital? No, it's not that hard. And people are recognizing that working from home does work. And it can work. And I know that, for all of us who have been in sort of, remote working for years, we've all known that, but now sort of the broader masses are getting that. Just a small anecdotal example of that, RBC prior to this work from home had roughly 4,000 people a day who would work from home. We're now looking at more than 70,000 people working from home a day. So, remote working has been embraced by RBC, because it has to. We still have people who are going into branches and people who are going into the office, but, we've really seen an acceptance of that. Suggestions for people moving forward. You've heard it from Allan, from Paul, from Pablo. Cash is king right now. So if you're not working on your forecast and seeing what your forecast looks like under different scenarios for the next 4, 6, 8, 12 months, you need to be looking at that. I spoke to a client the other day who said that, they think that based on the changes they've made, they're set until November of this year. So that's certainly the longest range forecast I've talked to a client about. But it makes sense. You've got to be out there looking at how do you keep your cash in. Part of focusing on cash is, of course, taking advantage of those government programs. And if you're taking advantage of some of them, you should be. If you haven't yet, you should talk to your bank. The banks have got a lot of different programs that are available to clients right now. Most of them are government backed right now, but there's always workarounds. There's always different things we can do for people. So by all means, give us a call. Other things that we are encouraging people to do is sort of along those lines of be creative and look at repurposing what you are doing. Can it be used in a different way to provide value to maybe a different client group right now? We've got clients who are in the Internet of Things space, lots of sensors, lots of sort of public space monitoring, and some of that technology has been repurposed for just for different audiences. For medical, for hospital, for doctors' offices. We've seen it repurposed in lots of different places. So if you're not looking for that opportunity to figure out what is it that our software actually helps people do and what other environment would that be helpful in, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And if you're coming to talk to anyone like me or anyone else in the financial in the financial world, we're all going to be asking that question. So put the work in, take the time to figure out how else you can be helpful. The only other thing we've sort of recommended to clients who've already looked at their cash, who've already done their forecast, who've already looked for different opportunities, we're recommending essentially take a few minutes to sort of take a step back and do some cleanup. Everyone's got a list of 10 projects that they haven't dealt with yet. Most of them are, I haven't updated my webpage in 3 years. It's a silly little thing, but it's a good opportunity right now to spend some time focused on a couple projects and just clean out the old stuff and be ready for the next wave, because it will come. And if you're ready for it and you're ready to sort of jump on those opportunities, it'll work for you.
It's a great positive note to end on, Darryl. Yeah, thank you so much, because many companies that I've talked to and other CEOs, yeah, they're facing a downturn right now, but they say, let's come out of this stronger. Let's do some rainy day projects that we haven't had a chance to get to.